So we're going to start our NPA meeting now. We're going to move right into public announcements. Or if I have an agenda in front of me, I could actually tell you what was legitimately first. Thank you for not leaving before the start of the meeting, because it's only a meeting if there's people here to enjoy it. The NPA announcements are now streamed live on YouTube. And for those of you technophiles, come and see the live version. It's better. A financial report. There he is.
Thank you.
Mr. Lockridge.
So at the last City Council meeting, there was a resolution introduced by Councilors Jing and Hartnett seeking to set us in motion towards additional funding for the NPAs across the city. And I'll read the language of that proposed resolution.
This is really important. This is additional money we're going to get to help make the NPAs a lot more viable. All the food that we get isn't paid for by donations.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Everybody who was here last June remembers that we had an exercise where we spoke about what we would do with additional funding, and we came up with ideas like translators and child care during meetings. That conversation has moved us toward City Council taking an interest in the subject of reinvigorating the financial side of neighborhood planning assemblies. Two councilors introduced a resolution at a recent City Council meeting, and this is the language of the resolution they introduced then. It's brief. Burlington City Council respectfully tasks the Burlington Community and Economic Development Office to work with the Neighborhood Planning Assembly Steering Committee members to identify needed financial resources that support the valuable services of neighborhood planning assemblies in the city of Burlington. Be it further resolved for CEDO staff to work with neighborhood planning assemblies, NPA steering committee members and NPA members to gather examples of activities and programs in which the needed financial resources could be spent, and for CEDO to identify the administrative support and management mechanism for the needed financial resources. And our wards are in the front of the line for this kind of activity right now. We have our eye on this ball, and your steering committee will be an active voice in urging progress with this decision. Now, this resolution, when it was introduced, did not pass, and part of what we came to understand was the resolution occurred too swiftly and without NPA participation, which is now, I believe, going to happen. So sometime in late January, you'll find that there's a conversation happening at the all wards meeting where we all get to participate in this decision-making process, which will go on for several months now. So it was an earnest and well-meaning resolution proposed by city councilors who are paying attention to the needs of NPAs, thanks in part to the message we've sent from this NPA. So congratulations to you for your role in that, and we'll keep you posted. If you have an interest in participating, please email any steering committee member, and you'll find their contact information on the agenda papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And for those of you who don't remember, the conversation that came out of this NPA last year was we were proposing several thousands of dollars per ward, which the combined wards 2 and 3 would give us about $4,000, I believe, as the resolution stood. And that's $4,000 that we can spend for community gardens, community improvement projects, facilitation with new Americans to get them involved in NPA meetings, or just coming to dinner. All sorts of things like that that gives the communities, each ward, more power to access things that they don't feel the city is delivering to them, which I think is part of the reason that Bernie started these NPAs. And I think it was about maybe in the tens of thousands of dollars originally. So if we do this right, we can work back up to a body that has a little bit more responsibility to more than just our own backyards, to helping each other out with some financial support. I don't mean to cover all that additional stuff, but there was a lot of history and a lot of really good work that was done to get us from the mere like $400 we get now, which all goes to the dinner. Would be nice not to have just the dinner money. It would be nice to be like, oh, somebody needs to repair this. Somebody needs to pay rent. You know, there's a tremendous amount of goodwill that could come, start to come. And anyways, that's the long of the short. The next announcement. Sorry, not yet. Do you have a public announcement? You do? Ben?
Hi, folks. How many of you have been to an NPA meeting before? Not just the dinner, but the meeting. You understand that this is one of the truest forms of participative politics and democracy. What I'm getting to is those of you who are having conversations having nothing to do with this, you're missing the point. This is what everybody in the world is looking for, your chance to participate in the ways that will improve your lives. So the food is great, but the conversations are really important around the people that are standing up here in the front. So I'm still hearing people talking. It's really, you know, there's a lot that goes into planning these things. It's also being broadcast on CCTV, and this tonight is the largest group for an NPA meeting that I've seen in a while, not for the dinner, but for the actual meeting. So this is very cool. You will also find that there are 3 wireless mics for your comments, your input to this thing. So we want to make sure that that's recorded and broadcast as well. So your input is very important. Thanks, Pat.
So on to next month's agenda. Weatherization and winter heat efficiency was pushed to next month's agenda because winter showed up too early, so we figured why not push it off till later. So unfortunately, we'll get it together as a steering committee and have those. Yep. Not yet. And then we'll move right into public forum. So those of you who are public, here is your forum. And if you have the need for a mic, I will come to you or you can come to it. I think you might have to turn it on.
Hi, my name is Solveig Overby. I just wanted to quickly let you know of next Wednesday, those of you who are interested in the Burlington Telecom case in front of the Public Utility Commission, the interveners, I'm one of those people intervening in that PUC case. We'll be having an informational meeting next Wednesday at the community room in the Fletcher Free Library. I have a little small flyer for you that you can pick up about that. Those of you that have questions, what's the status? The sale has not been approved by the Public Utility Commission, so it's not over. And it could be January or February till there is a decision. But if you have questions, next Wednesday, December 19th, 6 o'clock, Fletcher Free Library. We also could use financial assistance and help posting comment to the Public Utility Commission site. So I have flyers on both of those for those of you who want to help out. Thanks.
So those of you who would like to have forum, please keep it to less than a minute. Thank you. Charlie?
Hi. Hi, everybody. I'm Charlie Messing. Well, the city tells you that they want your input. They want to know how you feel. okay? They want to know what you think, and they want to know how you feel. Do it. Tell them how you feel, and show up to things, and tell them. The other thing, since I only have less than a minute, now I have a half a minute. Nice shirt. Beware of districts. The forum is before they provide all this information, but I'm commenting on the information that is yet to come. Districts, beware. And they should make Plan BTV, which is the Plan for Burlington, understandable by everybody. Everybody who reads it should be able to understand exactly what they're saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
Please give your name if you're comfortable.
Sure. Hi, my name's Jess Hyman. I live on North Champlain Street, and I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows about about a free holiday dinner for older Vermonters, for seniors, that's coming up on Christmas Day. And by older Vermonter, that's anyone 50 plus, which doesn't seem that old to me. But there'll be two ways to get a nice hot dinner. One is a free dinner, a luncheon at the Elks Club in the New North End from noon to 3 o'clock. You can just show up. Or you can have a hot meal delivered by calling AgeWell at 865-0360 by next Wednesday. And this is put on by a group of local organizations spearheaded by HANDS, which is helping and nurturing diverse seniors in partnership with AgeWell, the Elks Club, Burlington School Food Project, Penny Clues Cafe, Temple Sinai, and a whole bunch of other folks. So if you need more information, go to handsvt.org. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lucy Gluck, and I live on Blodgett Street. We're still working hard and going to continue to work hard to cancel the F-35 Crazy Jets from coming to Burlington and South Burlington. So if you want to help in any way or know what's going on, there's a website, Save Our Skies VT is a good place, or talk to me and I'll help you get engaged. There's a lot we can do, and we have less than a year to make this happen, but we can do it.
Excellent. Any other? Oh, here we have some public. Finn J. Public. Keep your pants on.
Hi, everybody. So I'm trying to buy a building next door. I'm trying to buy the Salvation Army building and turn Junkteeks into a greater, bigger space that can serve the community in many different ways. And so I'm making a fundraising video, and I was wondering if everybody here would just be willing, if I turned around to the camera and said Junkteeks, if everybody in the background would shout, "In the Old North End." Because you're all part of the Old North End. I don't mean to, it's just, it would be great. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to say anything. Is that okay, mostly, with everybody? All right, all I got to do is say, "In the Old North End," after I say Junkteeks. Okay, here we go. Are you ready? Okay. Junkteeks! In the Old North End! Thank you so much. That's really awesome. You guys are the best.
You should moderate the meetings, man. People will stay all night long. Finn, come on back, man. I got no talent compared to you. Anybody else have a wonderful announcement? Oh, sorry. Of course, you were right there.
Hi, everybody. My name's Kevin. I live over by Brian's North End Auto, Ward 3. I've been working on a little side project for a little while now, and I think it's in kind of a beta stage right now, and I could really use some help and some insight. I've been trying to get more involved in local politics and state politics, and it proved a lot harder than I thought. So I made kind of a Word document that has everything you could possibly want to know, but really concise. It's like a participation guide. It also has like the basic, covers the hierarchy of needs. It's got the food, water, shelter, everywhere you can find stuff like that in Burlington. So I accumulated a lot of stuff from the internet and put it all in one easy to read document, and I could really use some people to help me review it and give me your input. So yeah, come over, and I'm right over there. come over and say hi. I have a little sign-up list if you want an email copy of this. Yeah, so thank you.
Okay, we're almost at the end of the public forum, unless there's more public that would like forum. All right, we're going to move on there to the agenda then, unless there's anybody coming once. Okay, we're going to move on to Mr. Bernstein or New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve event highlights, planning thing. I don't know who is responsible for this. Sorry, I thought I was banned for what. Oh, sorry. Give me this.
Awesome.
All right, here we go.
Nice.
So, good evening, and thank you for having us tonight. I'm Doreen Kraft from Burlington City Arts, and this is Zach Williamson, also BCA, and we are here tonight to talk about Highlight, the New Year's Eve celebration. So how many of you have gone to First Night in the past? Wow, a little more than half the room. That's great. So New Year's Eve was always celebrated for the last 35 years by a First Night gathering. It was in 19 locations throughout the city, and every 45 minutes you jumped up and you went to the next event. And we, this year, were given the task by the City Council and the administration, as First Night no longer existed. They folded their tent after 35 years, some difficult years with, do you remember last year it was -2? It was really, really hard. And they lost money that year. And along with other things, it was really time after 35 years to rethink what this celebration was. Because 35 years ago, Burlington was a very different place, correct? I mean, yes, very different. So we took the mantle along with a number of other community partners and tried to shake it up to be respectful to the traditions that were a part of those 35 years that the community loved, but also to reinvent both the format and the participation in this event. So it is driven by artists who were selected through an RFP process to design things to take place throughout the city. There's still a core of events that will happen in the downtown, but throughout the evening it spreads through the entire community. And here, I believe we're here for 12 hours, is that right, Ben and April? 12 hours?
Noon to midnight, which is,
To
yeah,
1
that's right.
a.m.
Yeah, noon to 1 a.m. here with Ben and April. It's
some
awesome.
people are even pushing it harder. So I wanted to let you know that this year, here you go, Zach.
I get to wear that?
You get to wear that.
Oh, thank you. Oh, turn it on, yes.
There you go.
Nice. Yep,
It's time to party.
that is right. This was a surprise, yep.
We have
What else do you have in
posters
there?
here tonight. We brought bracelets. It used to be a button. This year it's a bracelet. It shows up at night. Can't lose your friends. And all of the tickets are $10 for adults, $5 for children, so we brought the price down. And also we have a kitty that's been set up by some very generous friends in the community. So if anybody is in need of a ticket and can't afford a ticket, nobody will be turned away. It will be an all-inclusive event. So we hope you're all going to join us, both here in the Old North End, as well as throughout the city. And Zach is going to tell you a little bit about some of those wonderful events happening throughout the city.
Sure. So there's a lot to talk about. I'm glad you guys have the website up. So for complete information, definitely visit, as you can see, Highlight. Up there it says highlight.community. You can also get to it through a more traditional address of highlightbtv.org. But it is very cutting edge to just have highlight.community up there, so we went for it. But if you were to click on events, you'd see a whole bunch of things happening throughout the city. You can also look at the at a glance is a good way to go venue by venue to see what's happening. But some highlights of Highlight, I would say, we're doing some of the more traditional things. We have fireworks at 8 o'clock shot off from Waterfront Park. So while that's a very traditional thing to have fireworks on New Year's Eve, we're making it different and hopefully more exciting by having a bonfire in Waterfront Park from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock. So that's a pretty unheard of thing. You're not allowed to have a bonfire in Burlington, but we're working with the fire department and we're gonna get that done. So there'll be a bonfire down there, and then right on either side of the 8 o'clock fireworks, we're working with a great group who did submit their ideas through the Bright Idea community-based project. The Cirque de Fuego will be down there doing fire dancing, fire eating, fire acrobatics. So it's going to be a really great scene down there. Right next door, we're in the Echo Center from 5 o'clock until 12:30 in the morning. We have some really great things down there. Another community-based project was called the Illuminated Waterfront. It's 10 artists, mostly from Generators sector and Champlain College, and they are working on a really interactive lighting display using projection mapping, LED technology, interfacing with music. Some really, really cool things are happening down at Echo, along with live music. We have girls from Vermont rocking down there. We have Soul Demande, and we have a kind of eclectic mix of some of the Vermont all-star musicians putting on something called Higher Love, which is like a look back to 60s, 70s, and 80s yacht rock, which should be really fun as well. Moving up the street, we have events in Contois all day. We're doing something called the Community Show and Tell. It was really what we want to do and highlight the community. So we're trying to find some of the amazing people here in Burlington that are here every day that we might not know about. So we're starting the day with Say It Forward, which is, if you haven't heard them before, they're a great family-style storytelling with live music, and they're true stories. So that's a really great event. And we also have Movement for Parkinson's Dance Company performing. We have Brian Blanchette from an Abenaki tribe who's going to be presenting about his history here in Vermont with the Abenakis. We have our very own Migmar, who works here a lot. Migmar Tizering is doing his great performance called I Love Tibet. We also have BHS, there's a great program at Burlington High School called Lake Semester. And so there's these great students who are also doing something over here, or did it last night, a show. But they're doing abbreviated performance of their semester, learning about place and what makes Burlington great. And so we have a performance by them as well. So that's a look at what's going on there. I'll just tell you a few more things. In this very building, are you guys gonna speak about what you're doing here? Okay, I'll leave that to Ben and April. But we also have, we're doing things at Karma Birdhouse down there. There's a really interesting event called Nova, which you really are going to have to go to experience to believe it. We're doing things in the soda plant, working with that new great place, Brio Coffee, Allison the Magician, Tom Girl Juice. Brett Hughes is going to be down in there kind of curating a honky-tonk jam session, which would be really fun. And they're doing something called the Creative Cocktail Project. So in short, there's a lot going on. I do encourage you to check out the website. As Doreen said, it's $10, which is the best bargain you can find. The other kind of change from first night is we're going to have box offices at every location, so you can go to any location and buy your wristband right at the door. It used to be a bit more laborious, so we're trying to make that easier. If you have any questions, you can email us at hello@highlight.community. You can also volunteer. I encourage you all to volunteer, and if you volunteer for a 3-hour shift, you get a free wristband. So you could do that in the afternoon and then go party all night. But we do need a lot of help to pull this off, so if you're interested in volunteering, you can also email hello@highlight.community, and I'll get that, and I will surely take you up on your offer. So yeah, that's in short what we're up to with Highlight. We have posters here if you'd want one. We also have wristbands that we're more than happy to sell you. And it's going to be a great event, and I really hope that you guys check it out. We couldn't do it without the community of Burlington, and it really is for the community of Burlington. So thank you very much.
All right, Zach, thank you so much. What I do want to say, though, is, you know, with the loss of Memorial Auditorium for at least this period in our lives, we don't have really big gathering spaces in town. And so some of these events are in smaller venues, which means if 2,000 people show up to get into the venue, not everybody's going to fit. So you might have to make some decisions about where you want to be during the day and make some plans, and we'll do our best to guide you. We're going to have ambassadors throughout the city and lots of volunteers to help people figure out how to access as many things as they want to attend. So grab a poster, grab your friends, and join us. It's going to be a wonderful evening and day for all of us.
Yeah.
We can certainly fit 2,000 people in here, can we? We do it for each NPA dinner, so no problem. The thing about trying to remember all the things that have been going on New Year's Eve, the website is very comprehensive, and it gives you an opportunity to read about what's going on as well as where and when. So there's no expectation, there's no test after tonight to remember all the things that are happening.
I really like that at a glance thing that Zach just mentioned to you, because you get to see on that, if you click on that, you get to see each venue and what happens there. So it kind of helps you structure where you want to go from this place to that place. And it has a map too that's very charming. So do we want to talk about just what's happening here?
Well, one of the things that doesn't come up here, and I know we've had problems with this in years past, you get really hungry, and what do? First night, you know, all the restaurants and bars are full. There's a few things here and there, and so we're hoping to solve that. Right here in this room, we're going to have some of the food vendors from our international festival offering snacks and meals here from
noon to about 9
around
p.m.
9 o'clock. Who's coming?
We definitely have Congolese food, and we definitely have Nepali food, and then we'll have some kind of Latin American food and drinks, hot and cold, and little snacks that you can get quickly all day long.
And Martian food. We haven't had that for a while. So down here during the day will be primarily for kids and families. So everyone Mais Sandoval from Mal Mais. Did you also know he's a juggler? Okay, well, he will be here during the day doing that, and then you can catch him later on in the evening with his full group.
And from noon to 4, we're going to have the One Arts Center folks come and do free art activities with kids. So you can just drop in anytime. You can sit back and have a coffee, and your kids can entertain themselves in the arts and crafts area.
There's one group that we discovered through, where is he? Jacob Edgar, who runs Kumbancha and Putumayo recordings. He found this family in the neighborhood and just around, and they're from Jamaica. They are so much fun, and we had them at the International Festival. Beautiful voices. They also do stuff with kids. They're used to working with kids, how to play music, storytelling, Jamaican games. So they're going to be here during the day and then performing upstairs at night. So if you like Bob Marley, you'll love this group. You can sing along with them, and it's just wonderful. Anyway, here we just printed up 50 of these programs. We didn't want to throw them on the table, so they would be placemats for dinner. So if you want one, there it is.
Okay. The one thing we should mention, Ben, before we say goodbye, is at 11 o'clock,
Oh, yeah.
we change our tune. Also, we should mention that the events start until 5 o'clock. They're down here, but then we start moving upstairs to the gymnasium and have some more serious kind of performances, real performances, culminating in the 60s. What is it? Read the title of it over there.
Read the title. What are we calling it? 60s flashback with Mellow Yellow.
So they're having a live light show that kind of takes form as you watch it, and they'll be playing songs from the 60s and early 70s till 1 a.m. And they have some interesting things planned for
midnight. Yeah.
For midnight.
Yeah. Okay.
One quickie. Also in the south end, if you're down there during Highlight, because Highlight's moved into that area as well. Down at Evolution Yoga, we have a 2:15 kids yoga class, and then we have an adult yoga class happening, as well as a kirtan. Kirtan going from 7 to 9 p.m. if you want to chant in the new year. So It should be a lot of fun. And we're right next to the soda plant. So they're all timed next to each other so you can stroll through the soda plant down there and then the generator. So there a lot of stuff going down in the south end. So come down and visit us there.
Okie dokie. Okie dokie. Thank you very kindly for that announcement. We're going to go move right into more important and interesting topics. Oh, we have questions, comments, concerns? No? Okay. City councilors here to talk about a whole bunch of city councilors, not just from our wards. We have visiting councilors. At least I see one. And we have our local ensemble. Without further ado. They're going to do a barbershop quartet. They're just working on the harmony. Right, good.
Yeah.
You do not want to be singing.
You get us going, Patrick.
So you have to stand back a little bit so you can get the camera.
Okay, cool. So my name is Max Tracy. I'm Ward 2 City Councilor, and we're going to be talking tonight about several charter changes that are going to be coming on the ballot in March. We've been working hard at the City Council and at the committee level to review these charter changes. And so what we're trying to do is give you an understanding of what the issues are that are going to be coming before the city in March. Some of which have already been, one of which has already been approved, and then two of which still have to be voted on to be put on the ballot on Monday. The first issue is a thing called the business personal property tax. And what the business personal property tax is that for businesses that have equipment, usually manufacturing equipment, that is valued at above $45,000, that equipment is taxed. And this was an issue that was brought to us by a brewery in the New North End called Simple Roots. They said, well, this is something that's a real drag on our business. It prevents me from wanting to invest in Burlington. And I've heard similar stories about that in terms of from other business owners saying that they feel like that this is something that doesn't necessarily make them want to invest in more material and expand, or more equipment and expand in Burlington. From what I understand, this was a tax that was that originated way back when Burlington had much more of a manufacturing sector in the South End, and mills and looms and those kinds of things, and it's now kind of come into this era. So this was an issue that was brought to our attention, and so the question that will be on the ballot is whether or not we should do a phased repeal of that tax over the next several years, and the businesses still pay property taxes and other forms of taxes. This is just taking away that tax for the issue on their particular equipment that they have for their business.
And I think there are only 2 communities in our region that have it. Did you mention that? I think it's just us, Burlington, and our friends to the east, Winooski. So we're the only 2 communities in the entire region that have this type of tax. And I'm Brian Pine, Ward 3, sorry.
Just Jane Odell, Central District, and I don't have much to add. It will mean immediately a loss of about $125,000 in tax revenue, which I'm pretty confident can be absorbed within our budget. And then over a longer period of time, the phase out goes on until 2026.
So that's the first charter change. That one has already been voted on to be put on the ballot. As part of that process, there are 2 public hearings. So if you have thoughts on this, there'll be 2 public hearings in January at different times of the day where we hear from the public any feedback that they have before the final vote is made to actually put it on the ballot. So that's the process. And this is because the city charter is like the city constitution, where you have to, it's a very deliberate process to change it. You have language that's initially voted on, then public hearings, then it's voted to put on the ballot. If voters approve it, then it goes to Montpelier, where the legislature actually has to approve it, and the governor actually has to sign it, and then it comes back to the city. So that's sort of the process that any of these changes will have to go through. So that's the first change. The second one has to do with permit reform. So if you are a property owner, a homeowner, or a renter who's had work done on your property, you'll know that it can be quite cumbersome and challenging to go through that process of getting a permit. I know I've talked with Jake about that with his property because he's done lots of great work on fixing up his house and things like that. And it's really difficult because it's spread between two different locations, so City Hall and Pine Street. And because of a resolution that Councilor Nodell did with Bright and Hartnett, is that correct? Called the Soup to Nuts resolution, which asked us to do a comprehensive look at the entire system several years ago, and it's taken several years to figure out what exactly we want to do. We were able to move towards a system where basically towards a consolidation of the zoning function of the planning office alongside code enforcement and inspection services, and moving that function down to Pine Street to create a one-stop shop, which was kind of the key finding or the key thing that they tasked us with in that resolution. And then that we sort of came out of it saying we really need to do this because to have people bouncing around between different areas when they're just trying to put in new windows or just fix up their home feels really cumbersome and unnecessary. And so what this does is it creates a new department of the city that's called I believe it's called the Code Enforcement and Inspection Department. And that will basically create a one-stop shop for that. You may have heard, there's an article in 7 Days this week about an earlier proposal to merge planning and zoning, or the planning aspect that still remains, with the Community Economic Development Office. Because when you take the zoning functions out, which is a significant part of our current department, it creates a much smaller planning function. We have one of our planners here today, Megan Tuttle, who does great work for the city, and alongside David White and others. And so we're sort of still trying to figure out what to do with that aspect of it. But I think that we decided that we want to see how this first phase goes, if in fact it does pass, and then move forward with seeing how that actually works before deciding on whether we need to merge. Because we can do the permit reform piece to make it easier for folks to fix up their homes without having to necessarily merge planning and zoning. So that's sort of the one aspect of it. One other piece that I do want to mention on that is that as we voted it out of the committee last night, it did have one element in there that is a change. In addition to that permit reform creation of a new department, is that they want that the planning director would be appointed by the mayor under this change. So that was a change basically that that was brought as part of that initial piece, and they backed off of, they meaning the administration, backed off of the merger piece of it, but the planning director being appointed by the mayor was a piece that was still left in it. So that's sort of the second charter change, and I don't know if others have anything else to add.
I would just add that it's the only department out of the entire city where the department head is actually accountable to a group of 7 citizens who serve on the Planning Commission. That's the structure now. So the planning director is hired and supervised by a citizen commission called the Planning Commission. Under this proposal, the planning director would report to the mayor. There would still be a planning commission, which would still develop policies and adopt ordinances, or at least recommend ordinances for the city council. So that planning function would continue, but that department head would be, as all other departments in the city, would report directly to the mayor.
Yeah, and I guess I was, on a personal level, I was fine to allow that piece, which I'm not totally crazy about, but I was fine to allow that because I was much, much more concerned about the merger of planning and zoning and CEDO, and I felt like the administration did compromise significantly by pulling that off of the table. So I felt like I had to give something as well. So that was sort of my give, and I felt like, well, and I guess my thinking was that, and I think Councilor Nodell has also said this, is that you may have concerns about this particular mayor, but if it was a different mayor, I may have a totally different feeling around that appointment. So I don't think that I could just say that that's a categorical issue. So that's sort of where I came down on it, and why I decided to vote it out of committee. We'll be reviewing whether or not to put that on the ballot on Monday.
And the Downtown Improvement District, I think, is the final item that we're going to cover. And we have the city's foremost expert on this topic, I think, because Adam has spent the better part of the last year and a half, 2 years on this subject. So rather than us attempt to pinch hit, we're going to have Adam do the main pitch, and we're going to be here to talk and answer questions. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, councilors. I'm happy to be here. And I should really thank Councillor Nodell for me being here, because if you remember, Councillor Nodell, you were the one, as City Council President, who appointed me to the Downtown Improvement District Advisory Committee. And if I had known that it was going to take 2 years worth of work, and then by default, I was going to become the spokesperson for this, I might have recommended someone else. But no, it's been quite the experience, and thank you for getting the slide deck up. So again, my name is Adam Roof. I'm the City Councilor from Ward 8. Only been to this NPA a couple of times, so I'm glad to have been invited. I've been asked to be short, stick to the facts, and give as much time as possible for questions and comments. So there's a prepared PowerPoint that I'm going to try really hard to stick to. If I deviate, I'm going to count on Sarah here to throw that cup at me, and I will get back on track. And so I might refer to my notes here. So if I seem like I'm reading, it's because I am. First, I wanted to start off with a basic question about what is an improvement district. An improvement district is a defined area within which businesses and property owners are required to pay an additional tax in order to fund what's called enhanced services within the district's boundaries and within its limited purview. While funding comes primarily from businesses, districts elsewhere have been known to draw on other funding streams such as residential property owners, nonprofit operations, as well as grants and donations. We'll get more into how this proposal is contemplating funding in a few slides. But also, a final point on this is these districts are created to fund only what we call enhanced services supplemental to those already being provided by a municipality. Slide, please. So this slide is what isn't an improvement district, because just to put some context around this conversation, an improvement district is not contemplated to approve or implement public policy, to manage rights of way or public space, creating policies around policing or law enforcement, nor can a district levy taxes or bond for infrastructure developments. However, this is an important point, just like the city can contract with or delegate certain services or operations to any entity, the government, we would retain that right for this entity as well. Slide. Could you get the, yeah. So some quick history of improvement districts. Some people ask, do we already have one? We indeed do. The Church Street Marketplace District, which operates as a city department, also an important piece of this conversation, been around for about 40 years. Only 40 businesses and properties on Church Street fund a budget of about $1 million a year. We also have a downtown improvement district, which is essentially the downtown core. It's been around for about 20 years. It's limited to one enhanced service, which is to subsidize parking in our garages. Annual budget about $320,000 a year. So just for context, a little bit of history, we do have these districts in place, and this plan as proposed contemplates the merging of the two, actually not the merging, creating a new single unified entity that operates as a private nonprofit, which is important. So next slide, please. I'm going to move through this a little bit more quickly because I want to get into the content of what the proposal is now. Look back to January 2017. By resolution, the City Council formed the Downtown Improvement District Advisory Committee, which former President Odell was kind enough to appoint me to. We did about a year's work of finding a consultant. We worked with Progressive Urban Management Associates, who's a national consulting firm on setting up improvement districts around the country. You can see that the council has been involved with different reports and getting information. We can go to the next slide. A little bit more recent history over the last couple of months. But really this process has kicked up over the last couple of weeks. The City Council has held work sessions. The Board of Finance met 5 times. We asked them to be the ones to provide us with a recommendation for the City Council to then refer to charter change. And charter change over the last 2 nights went through those recommendations and developed the actual language, which has now been published publicly. Councilor Tracy, of course, serves on that and really did a great job in working through those, and I'll give him some more credit later on, I think. So next slide. I will. All right, let's get into what the proposal is is contemplating. So this is what the charter change, I should be clear, the reason I was saying that, this came out of charter change last night by a 2-to-1 vote, and Councillor Tracy voted not to move it forward, so I just want to be transparent about that. All right, let's start with who's paying in. So who are the fee payers? Fee payers of the DID would include all non-residential properties within the boundaries not owned by religious organizations, government agencies, or social service providers, which is an important piece because nonprofit agencies are included as fee payers, but there are carve-outs for those social service providers. There are also, for nonprofit fee payers, a hardship claim that they can make based on the ability to pay. So they can come in and say, wait, I'm a small nonprofit, may not be a social service provider, but I can't pay, and our abatement board would dictate those terms and make those decisions. Also, fee rates would be submitted by the governing board for the city council to the city council for approval on an annual basis. Next slide. Next. A lot of paying in. Next slide. All right. So boundaries, and we're going to look at a map in a moment, but just from a text-based perspective, the district right now will be slightly expanded from the current DID existing boundaries. There's a small addition that we'll see on the map. There's also a process for how we would expand the district. There was a contemplation about, well, maybe we should, from this process going forward, make the district a little bit bigger. Board of Finance said, you know what, that might be too much. Let's maybe set it up as the existing district, a little bit larger, but with a process for how property owners and folks could petition the city council for the boundaries to grow. Next slide, we'll look at a map real quick. This is going to be really hard to see, and I apologize for that with the lights and the size. But for the most part, now I'm on stage. Here we go. Here we go. But if you see here we are on Pearl Street, north side of Pearl Street, up here to, this is South Winooski, on the east side of South Winooski down here. Here is, help me folks, this is Maine, and this is Maple here. So we've got a little bit of expansion right here happening as well, but that's just to capture the blocks that right now are currently under construction. Oh, and now I have a clicker, now we're cooking. Which one? This? There it is, all right. Governance. A big conversation about governance, maybe the most important aspect of this. The DID, to be clear, would be established as a new 501c6 nonprofit and be governed by a 13-member board. I'm going to go through this a little bit slower because this is important. The board would comprise of the following: 7 members appointed by the city council plus mayor during our normal annual appointment process, to include 2 residents, 1 nonprofit fee payer, 2 business representatives, and 2 property owner fee payers. In addition to those 7, the remaining 6 members would be selected amongst fee payers, to include 1 resident, 2 business representatives, and 3 property fee payers. In addition to the 13, there would be 4 ex officio non-voting members from city departments, including BPD, our police department, our Parks Department, our DPW department, and then 1 representative from the City Council. We can talk more about governance in a little bit, but one important piece about governance is that a lot of this here has been baked into the charter. Another contemplation is that how the board would operate would be established in governing bylaws, which the City Council would have to approve at the inaugural stage when this was stood up, as well as whenever those bylaws would be changed. Those would be submitted by the governing board. The city council would have to bless it. Next slide, please. Oh, that's me now. I'm not a natural presenter. All right, so capital planning and improvements, also important, because right now general city tax payer funds cannot be used for contributing to Church Street. The enhanced stuff on Church Street, which is most of what we know as Church Street, including the bricks, are considered enhanced services, so we can't use our capital funds to do that. This change will actually open it up. The city also will include all public areas within the DID in its planning responsibilities and provide those basic level infrastructure requirements. A little bit of continuation here on capital planning and improvements. The DID and the city will share in the cost of providing these enhanced capital improvements. I already gave this example about how the bricks are considered that sort of that enhanced service or enhanced infrastructure. Also, the DID is required to go through all standard approval processes while providing these enhanced services, such as the lights, just for more context. This was something that Councillor Tracy, you advocated for quite a bit in this, so that's where I was kind of indicating that you should be getting some credit for some of these points as a member of the Charter Change Committee. Sunset clause. The DID, as established in the charter, will sunset after a 10-year period. We did also build in a 5-year mandatory review so that that DID would have to continually be proving its value, and then the city council, if we determine, or if a future council determined, could extend that, that time horizon. The purpose for that is that when some DIDs are set up and they don't have these in place, and they get complacent and they don't keep pushing and they don't keep being reactive to needs of downtowns, and they get stagnant. So these sorts of things are considered best practice. This slide, which is the last slide, I think I'm good on time. Public accountability measures. This is a suite of things that over time has found their way into the charter, and I want to run through them quickly because they at least attempt to address some of the fears and concerns that are we've heard over the last couple of years, and certainly up through the last couple of months. I'll go through these ones a little bit slowly and then I'll stop. City Council has majority appointment over the authority of the governing board. Appointment authority over the governing board. The city must approve the annual management plan. Just for clarity, the management plan is the document that would be established after the charter vote that would determine specific work plans for the DID, articulate which specific enhanced services would be provided, and show things like job descriptions for their employees. We would have to approve those. Council also approves the annual fee payer rates and the methodology to get that number. The city must approve the annual operating budget. The city would collect on people's tax bills the money, and so we have to remit those funds annually. So it's another public accountability measure. And then the city retains its responsibilities, including permitting of public space. And finally, this is relatively new, the governing board, their meetings will be subject completely to Vermont meeting law. This is not a fully expansive breakdown of every piece of what's being proposed. I was asked to be as quick as I could. So I don't want to pretend that this is fully expansive, but I did my best to remain factual and be quick. And I thank you for being here, and I'm happy to answer whatever questions I can. I'm not necessarily an expert, but I think I'm getting pretty close. Up to you. Any questions? Yeah.
What's the current model for the governance of the marketplace? And why wasn't that just used and expanded to bigger districts?
So right now, thank you. So the question, I can repeat the question. So the question was, what is the current governance model of the Church Street Marketplace? And why was that not simply expanded throughout the entire downtown? It's really one of the core questions of how we'll be making decisions moving forward. The current governance model is a commission, a 9-person commission appointed by the city council. We also have an executive director, which reports sort of to that commission, but not really. It really reports to the mayor. And that is one of the reasons. I'll use that as a segue into talking about why the shift. The executive director, Ron Redmond, serves two masters in that sense. It's an organization that's set up to provide these enhanced services as improvement districts do. But as a city department, they also have the ability to do permitting of public space. They do all the patio sections on Church Street. They do those sorts of functions for the city. The issue about expanding that out really started from early conversations with fee payers of off Church Street. So the DID fee payers who pay about 9 cents on, I think it's $100 of their assessed value, $1,000 of their assessed value. It's not a huge fee, but it goes to that $320,000 for parking services. What those stakeholders said was, look, we will participate in something like this, but the current model has the city with unilateral ability to dictate where the money goes. And so what they were asking for is a little bit more ability to have some say over the process. Now, the back and forth over the last 2 years has been, okay, let's have that conversation, but about the city not having unilateral control, but what are we going to make sure that we do as a city to make sure that we do have primary control? You can't have that, you can't eliminate necessarily this unilateral control because it has to go through the budget process. The mayor and the council have ultimate authority, and that commission really doesn't have a ton of power, and the fee payers are really left out without any ability to participate. That's a justification. An expansion of the marketplace does not require a charter change. And so we're contemplating the charter change because we're contemplating this shift from a city department plus a there is also no governance for those off Church Street folks. So when they pay in, they're not on the commission. The commission just sets the rate. They don't have any real representation. So that's the answer to that for right now.
I'd like to jump
Please,
in on that. Because this kind of gets to the heart of why I have also voted against referring the creation of the DID as in its current form, voted against referring it to charter change, mainly because the process right now feels very compressed in terms of there's been a lot of details that are getting put together just in the last week or two, but also because I am not convinced we couldn't do this as well just using the department framework and addressing some of the governance issues while keeping it a city department. For example, you could have the commission hire and fire the director, so it's quite clear that who that person works for. You could change the board makeup and so forth. We've kind of ran out of time in terms of having a public option to look at alongside the nonprofit. Most places in the U.S. do these districts as separate nonprofits. But as of today, I just hadn't gotten convinced that this was the right model for Burlington. But we will probably see what the public has to say.
Hopefully,
so I just want to explain my position.
No, absolutely, and that's a fair position. And I'll just one more piece on that. This has been this proposal's been a byproduct of a long process, and so there wasn't me or one or just three people sitting in a room or anything writing this out. So. That is just innate, and you can go through that process, but that is where we ended up, and that's what the Board of Finance, which voted 4-1, Jane did vote against, but that was the result of the process. This is a result of that process. Jim.
What assurances will we have, like structurally in this, that the value derived from these revenues will benefit all the people of Burlington and not be repressive of any population like
Absolutely.
Homeless people?
Absolutely. Let me start by saying that was one of my core things going into this was I see an opportunity for this district to support the homeless community in the downtown. I and other members of the council through the Public Safety Committee have done a lot of work around the homeless community. And let me tell you how this governance structure, this setup would protect against those things. There are other ways to protect, but this is what the proposal is contemplating. On an annual basis, the DID would have to come to the city with its plan of action. And we would say yes or no to that plan of action. One of the things that would be a hallmark for me if this were to get through the city and then the city council and the voters would be very clear articulation of what those actions would be in this what we call management plan. We can call an MOU, a contract, whatever we want, but it would say things like this. This is what I would want to see, right? Is that you will be a funding partner, right, to grow the team of straight outreach from its current level from 4 up to its maybe historical level of 6. That would be in the management plan. We would have to approve that. We would approve the job descriptions, for example, of ambassadors. It's a normal service that these things do, but these ambassadors could do a lot of different stuff, right? And we want to make sure that they're doing things that are in line with what the city council wants and our values, especially related to the homeless community. So we're going to make sure that those job descriptions are, again, approved by the city council, so they're not saying, go be thugs on the street and move the riffraff along. Absolutely not. And you can look at other DIDs that were poorly managed and designed, and you can see examples of that. So those are those accountability measures that I'm referencing. I could go on, but I'll stop there. Sure.
So I'm worried about privatizing.
Yes.
So this is a nonprofit is private, and we also saw Burlington Telecom privatized. So I'm just worried, is this, the next step in the slippery slope to privatizing a lot of city functions?
Yes.
And why shouldn't we all oppose this? Because we don't want privatized.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so this was another one of those core principles that I and others went in during DIDAC saying, okay, we know that Burlingtonians are sensitive to this notion of privatization. We know that. So what are we going to do to design this thing to make sure that those fears do not manifest as reality? I'll repeat from one of the things that I said here. The powers that this entity would have will be non-governmental. By charter, they will not be able to do any of the sorts of things that the government does. That will just be baked into the law. They will only be allowed by charter and their authority, and then by the management plan and their enhanced services, which we get to approve over and over again, to do the things that we want them to do that typically cities don't do. So that's just the fact of the matter is that we carved out through the authorities list that this entity would have it is a private entity. I'm not arguing that, certainly no way, but they don't have the authority to do any municipal sort of government work. And so that's the best answer I can give you, because it just really is that clear. We did delineate that line between public powers and what the powers this entity would have. It would have the powers of any other private entity to do what private entities do, but it's not privatizing any of the government services whatsoever.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're going to open up, we got like 5 minutes left, to other questions that aren't necessarily about the DID. Any other questions for our city councilors? Wealth of access to knowledge. We have one from someone.
I was just going to ask the follow-up, so that the DID would not have the ability to allocate use of the space on Church Street?
No.
So, for example, doing a cafe, so that would still go to who? There would be no longer an entity?
So that space would still be managed 100% by the city.
But what organization, if there's no marketplace, no Church Street
The
marketplace?
city council license committee would take that responsibility on.
So you'd have a list of the things that they would have left, so that they're losing some things and gaining other things.
Yeah, if you look at it that way, if you think of it as the current setup, and then we're shifting to something new, what remains at the city are all those government functions. And really, the marketplace doesn't perform many other core government functions other than that management of public space. That 100% stays with the city, and that's in the charter.
Any other questions?
Okay, Adam. So I went to several of these meetings, and wasn't this sort of, you made it worse. This way? Yeah. Isn't it because the city was getting kind of tired? Wasn't this about maintenance more than a lot of other things, that this came after the study and the consultant?
So I think is there?
So that was, I mean, I don't think, maybe I missed that part, but I thought this was more, I looked at it after hearing some of the things, that it's kind of like keeping the health and safety of downtown better managed by people who are there all the time to really,
Piece of it, yeah.
care about those things more so than city council that's busy doing a lot of other things. I mean, that was kind of what I got out of it. That it wasn't, but I did hear the part about people being really worried about privatization.
Totally.
But it's really about, and then I went away from the meeting thinking of it as like a condo association fee, that it was the people there that were pooling their money for services like picking up cigarette butts and maintenance type thing.
It is certainly that as well, yeah.
Sort of what I got out of it.
So yeah, I mean, so the basis of how improvement districts usually operate is the cheesy three-worder, it's clean, safe, and fun, picking up cigarette butts, all those sorts of things are included in that. So Karen, was there a question in there? Or just
I didn't know if you had
Made that point. She wanted to make a point.
A lot of it had to do with
I see. Yep. Need. You're talking about?
Our marketplace is awesome.
Yes.
We're letting it really get run down.
So-
Bricks are uneven.
So I think what you're referring to, I think, is the report card that our consultant went through. I know you were involved in some of those focus groups. So the report card came back with a B-.
C.
Was it a C?
C.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Whatever, not good, not good whatsoever. So yeah, and one of those was that the infrastructure is tired. And one of the issues here, right, is that we don't have a funding mechanism in place to really pay for, say, a re-bricking, which would be a big expenditure on Church Street. Right now, we can't use city capital funds. That's an enhanced service. The 40 properties on Church Street can't afford that. Long gone, unfortunately, the days of Senator Leahy pulling in federal transportation money to do this sort of work. And so this is a funding mechanism that we can tax businesses more to get them to participate in providing these sorts of things that, frankly, we should not be burdening the general tax base with, because your property taxes go towards this base level of service that should be equitable across the city. But the downtown has specific needs, or different parts of the city have different needs. There's also a piece of maybe having improvement districts elsewhere in the city to provide different functions depending on where. But I'm going on too long, so I'm going to...
Yep. Jess. Oh, Kevin.
I'll be quick.
All right.
Sorry. I'll be quick. So this is not about that one. This is back to the personal property tax. So you mentioned that I've been hearing a lot that it's like an old tax, right? That is like kind of being it's a relic of like when the South End used to be more industrial. So you said that it's been brought up like recently by the business owners that like, you know, they're not a fan. I'm curious, you know, is there any particular reason why now? I mean, is this the first that anyone's heard of it? It seems kind of odd that it's just kind of, it's an old tax and we're just now hearing about it.
It's actually probably goes back, I served on the council in the 1990s and it was an issue then. There just wasn't consensus that it needed to be addressed. And since then, all the surrounding towns got rid of it. So we're the holdout, basically, us and Winooski. That's what happened. Yeah.
Can I, as a business owner, can I speak to that? Because I have to pay this tax. And I encourage you to get rid of it. I had someone come to my business all of a sudden one day and decide, oh, you owe us on this tax. And they went through my office and had added up. It's not just $45,000. It was like they went through and wanted to see every computer, every filing cabinet, every table. And I had to itemize every single item in my business. And then they prorated everything, even the fit up. So everything I'd already paid tax on, I had to pay tax on again. And it was such a pain to go through that process. And when I talked to lots of other business owners, they weren't paying it. So it was indiscriminately applied in the city. And I complained about it and was told that, you know, like that they're doing their best to do it. But I was like, why did all of a sudden, but I'm medical. Wow. And so they thought that I had really expensive medical equipment, and I don't. But I still had to pay that tax and go through that whole process. And it was very frustrating. So I complained about it a long time ago, and nothing happened. I'm glad that you're thinking about getting rid of it because I think it's unfair.
It is a tax that doesn't tax a business based on their profitability, doesn't tax them based on anything that you'd think would make a whole lot of sense. So it really is a regressive tax, really. It doesn't serve to provide a fair taxation of business, and it discourages investment. So Jess, I think Jess was next, and then, yeah, sure.
If we want to continue this conversation and then come back to it.
No, let's just keep going.
Yeah, keep going. Yeah.
Oh.
It's a question actually for you. And is this on? Like how much time did it take you to do that versus how much money did you?
Every year I have to do it, especially the first time. It took me like 3 or 4 hours the first time to go through this process, and then the tax that I had to pay was like just a few $100s. Like it was ridiculous for the amount of work. But then I had to do that every year. Then I had to go to somebody in a committee and come back. It was just
And is
so
that
silly?
That's typical? That's very typical.
And is that also characterized sort of on the city's end of how much work?
It's a burden on the city for sure.
And probably a lot of the money that is being raised by it is being used to collect.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Just a super quick question about the funding for the new nonprofit. So as a nonprofit, would the DID go after philanthropic money in addition to the fees, or would still be just primarily funded by the fees?
Adam, you could answer that one. I don't think it's intended to. I think it's intended to be funded entirely by the fee payers. And it's 501c6, so it's not a C3. So I don't know that they're actually eligible for the same charitable deduction that C3s get.
Yeah, you don't get, you could take donations. It's just harder to get donations when it's not tax deductible. So to be clear, it wouldn't be a tax deductible contribution.
I'm sorry, we're
running out. We're out.
We're over time.
We're over time.
There's
Can I just
a
say one
multitude
quick
of
thing, Patrick?
questions.
Can I just say one thing?
One
thing, which is we need to decide by Monday whether to put the Downtown Improvement District on the ballot. I actually am undecided. I know Adam's convinced. I don't think Jane supports it. I'm not going to speak for Max, but I need to hear from people. There's about 50 of you here. You're some are from Ward 2, some from Ward 3, but we're all one family. So just weigh in. Tell us what you think. We really need to know. I have to say the part that I put up there, it's now gone, was the structure of the governance. If you add up the total members, there's 13. 9 of them are either business owners or fee payers. It's heavily favoring a group that I think needs to have strong representation, but not so severely outnumber everyone else. So that's still my primary concern is governance. And I'd like to hear what other people think, not tonight necessarily, but please weigh in and let us know. Thanks.
Yeah, that was a significant concern for me. So in terms of the structure of this, the timeline of this is pretty condensed, meaning that we got specific language around governance just last week and around Thursday and Friday. We were dealing with this at the City Council on Monday. It was referred to committee on Monday. Then I spent the last 2 nights in committee dealing with it. It was voted out on a 2-to-1 with me voting against last night. And then it's going back to the council next Monday. So we've really had a little over a week to discuss the actual governance structure. So while there has been public process, the actual language around what this thing is actually going to do has only been out for a little bit. And there's still key aspects that have not been determined because so much of this is a general framework. A lot of the specific details around how this thing will actually be managed would come after it's been approved. And I think there's key questions around some of these issues around protections for vulnerable individuals and other things about how actually the DID is going to function that remain unanswered questions because that management letter has yet to be issued. In addition to that, I also feel that similar to Councillor Pine, that the 9 business owners of 13 or 9 business and property owners is far too slanted in the direction of businesses when downtown belongs to all of us. And downtown isn't just about business and property owners, it's about all of us and making sure that it's a place that we all feel welcome. And I'm concerned that if we slanted too much towards business owners, that the drive is really going to be towards all around things that get you to spend money in downtown. And we all know there's so much more to downtown than just spending money. And making our downtown interesting and weird and just different, I think, is really what I'm hoping to do and what I want to do with our city. And I feel like centralizing this authority will have that impact of really trying to make it just about that business interest when there's so many other aspects of civic life that take place there. So I did not support referring it. I didn't support it at committee, and I don't think I'm going to be supporting putting it on the ballot.
Well, hey, thank you everyone for my time, and thank you for the councilors to giving me that time. Just a little clarification. We do vote on the 17th on ballots and then also on the 28th as well after some public hearings, but that doesn't go to subvert anything that's been said. Thank you so much, and I'm off. Hey, Liz.
Hey, everyone. I was pushing them, getting the hook because I knew that everybody wants to hear about the school budget. And I knew that was really boring. I'm just kidding because I find that really interesting. And my question was, when are they going to vote on this? Because it sounds like something people are really interested in, including me. I didn't get to ask my question. But it'll probably be not soon, right? Monday? Oh, okay.
You want to get over it this way? To the post?
Yep. Thanks. So everybody call your city councilor this weekend. I know I will be calling my city councilor this weekend and telling him what I think. I think he just left. So I'm Liz Curry. I'm your Ward 3 school commissioner. And Monica Ivanchik is also here. She's the Ward 7 school, 7 or are you district? 7 school commissioner. And I'm here to talk about the school budget. And like we were just talking about taxes, city taxes, now we can talk about state taxes. So there's some good news this year, interestingly. I don't know how many people are familiar with Act 46. It was passed about 3 or 4 years ago, and when it was passed, it really hurt Burlington a lot because part of the law was that we weren't allowed to raise taxes for 2 years, and then they also took a whole bunch of money back from us. So those were really rough years, but apparently it's paying off, kind of sadly for other reasons because it's closing schools in rural Vermont. But the good news is that the way the school tax works is that Vermont takes all the taxable property in the whole state, and it's in one big state property tax database. And then they look at how much revenue comes from that for education, and they divide that money up by all the students in the schools. And because of consolidation, there's not as many costs to send back to all the schools. So all the students, all the taxes divided by all the students generate this number that's called the dollar yield, and that is 10,666. And so that is what every student in the state is going to get from the state. Then what happens is, if you're a school district that wants to spend more than 10,666 on your kids in the district, you raise that tax locally in your district. So Burlington spends like 14,900 something per kid. So we'll get that from the state, and then we have to raise that 4,900 difference. And that's what sets our school tax rate in Burlington. The good news is that 10,666 is 4.6 higher than it was last year, which means we're basically making money this year. So last year that was 10,002 something, and we had to raise the difference. This year, the floor is going to be higher, so we won't have to raise as much. So that's good news. So what's happening now with developing the school budget is that the school board had its first kind of detailed budget discussion Tuesday night at our board meeting. On next Tuesday, we have another special board meeting to talk with all the principals and to hear from them in more detail and have a real conversation with them about how they got information or ideas, priorities, feedback from the staff, and how they came up with a set of priorities. So their priorities are, I'm sorry, I don't have control of the PowerPoint, and it's long. Can you go back up, like towards the, keep going real fast, past all this stuff, keep going, and it'll keep going, keep going, keep going, and stop. System leaders, so you go up one, system leaders. So these are the priorities that came out of all the schools. We have 10 schools in the district. And these are the priorities that came from that. Focus on early learning, current strategies to reduce achievement gap, social emotional learning, restorative practices. Our strategic goals are inclusive culture and teaching, closing the achievement gap through equity initiatives, and financial sustainability. So aligning with the strategic goals, and then obviously federal and state compliance. And then if you can go up one more slide, I can share with you the board also had a budget work session and came up with criteria through like a 3-dot system. So these criteria represent the items that got the most dots, not necessarily board consensus. And they are remarkably similar to the building administrators, except some board members feel like we need more opportunities for high achievers. Not all board members feel like that. I am one of the board members who feels like that's not something we should be putting resources into specifically, because I feel like there's other ways to create those opportunities. But otherwise, we seem to be aligned. So what we'll do is we'll look at the costs of all the different things that people want in the budget. Like, the schools have absorbed a lot of social services, and we need a lot more money that used to go to social service agencies, but now it's going to not going to the schools, but we need it for more supports for behavior interventions, social work, students with special ed. Some of them spend like up to 8 years in school, because if we had a life skills program, they could graduate earlier. but we just have a lot of needs. So fortunately, this year we will be able to fund more needs. So I'm pretty happy and optimistic about that. We don't yet know what the tax impact will look like until we get to the January meeting when the board makes a decision about what kind of costs we want to see in the budget. If we wanted to pay for everything that everybody wants, it would be like $5.3 million, and that would be a 7% inflation rate on the budget. So that would be a really big tax hit. But if we can take some of the opportunity that we have to spend more money and put it into really strategic, impactful things, and I think we'll have a really great budget to bring back to you in January when we will know the tax rate. And I also wanted to say thank you all for supporting the bond for the high school. It's really exciting, and it's going to be a wonderful gift for all the kids who are in middle school right now and future generations. So I can answer any questions. Thank you for being a teacher.
And then also, I really love that the early learning is a priority on both those counts. I feel like that's been something that I've heard parents and teachers and schools asking for a number of years. So that makes me really happy to see. I just have a question. You're in the Board 2 or the Ward 2 and 3, areas, and I'm just wondering if there's has there been any conversation, seeing that we're coming into 10 years as magnet schools in this Old North End, has there been any conversation at all around the magnet schools from the board level? Is that?
You mean about the magnet schools themselves, like
Yeah.
being magnet schools?
Yeah.
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, I think SA is upset because some of the sustainability coaches' time went into
The instructional coaching.
instructional coaching, but that was always the plan. So
Yeah.
I don't think people know that, but that was there was never a plan to have permanent coaches in the magnet schools, but they have been funded every year. So
Yeah. And so that's really all I had to say, but I'm just so grateful, and I'm so glad that they are so aligned.
I know. It was a good year. It is a good year. So there's links on your agenda if people want to look at this presentation. It's on the website. Thank you.
Delightful. Thank you, Liz. Megan Tuttle is going to come next and talk about Plan B TV, which we all know and love at this point. You guys have your need 2 mics?
Or I should just pass it. I can get it.
Hi, everyone. Sorry. Jeez. I'm Jennifer Wallace-Broder. I'm a planning commissioner. I live in the New North End, and I'm here representing the Planning Commission to talk about the Planning Commission's work to update the municipal plan, which is called Plan BTV. We've been at this for about a year. It's actually a really important piece of the work that we do as a commission. We're required to update the plan every 5 years by state statute. And we've had a plan in Burlington for, since the 70s. So this is not new work for us, but it's important because it lays out the vision for how we use and develop land for the next 10 to 20 years. So we have been working as a commission on this with staff for quite a while. We had a public hearing last week, and we are reaching out to NPAs and other community organizations to talk about what's in the plan and to get input on the direction we're taking with this. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Megan Tuttle, who is the planning staff that's been working really closely with us on this to walk through the plan. And we're going to give you some tools and information on how you can provide input either tonight or at another time that's convenient to you. Thanks.
So I'll just say for our city councilors that are here, it's really nice to be using a microphone that I don't have to think about, because every time I talk to city council, I'm always asked, pull the mic closer because we can't hear you. So you have a really nice meeting venue. This is a great space. So as Jen said, we've been working with the Planning Commission over the last year, and many of you will know that I was here earlier this year to talk about our update to the Municipal Development Plan, or Plan BTV. This is something that we've been working on updating using not only the Planning Commission to help us evaluate what was in the plan before, what we were able to achieve, maybe what we weren't and why, what our goals are for the next 10 to 20 years, but also talking with all of you about things that you see as being really important for us to make sure in the plan for the next 10 to 20 years. So the work that the Planning Commission has been doing has been really a combination of those efforts and inputs, and the draft is a way for us to actually package and share all of that information with you. So I've talked before, but really quickly, we use this plan in a number of ways. This plan certainly doesn't answer all of the questions about our future as a community, but it is a tool that helps us to understand what some of the kind of guiding principles or guiding goals are for our community in the future. One of the things that I think is really important about this plan is that it's always been organized around sort of individual topics that we talk about as a community. We've talked about some of those here tonight, things like our economy or our infrastructure or housing or our schools. Our plan has always sort of treated each one of these issues as separate and independent issues and talked about what our goals and, you know, kind of what steps we were going to take around each of those issues in the future. But one of the things that we heard in talking with you and talking with the Planning Commission is that these issues are really much more connected to one another. And as we make decisions about funding certain parts of our community or making improvements or investments in another part of our community, they all have impacts on one another. Having a healthy school system is really essential to having a prepared workforce to sustain our community. So one of the major changes in this version of the plan is that we present what our community's kind of future-looking vision and goals are around characteristics that we've heard are really important, rather than organizing them around each of these individual topics and treating them exclusively. So what I wanted to do tonight was walk through kind of what those characteristics are that we've been hearing about being really important and some of the ways that we tie them back to those individual planning issues. But as Jen said, also give you some materials so that you can share with us what you think about when you think about each of these characteristics and what it means for you, for us to be successful in being able to achieve these characteristics as a city. So the first major characteristic that we hear about all of the time, and we've talked about it in this room already tonight, is how Burlington is a distinctive city, how we are unique and different from other cities in our region, other cities across the country. This part of our plan really talks about all of the different things that make us distinctive, whether it is our natural environment, the physical beauty that surrounds our community. Wow. Hopefully that helps you all see. The physical beauty that surrounds our community, the types of buildings and streets and sidewalks and yards and plantings that form the built environment of our community, as well as things like our social and political and cultural attitudes towards issues in the city. These are all things that make us really unique. And the plan talks about a number of kind of big picture goals for how we will continue to facilitate and foster that unique identity, whether it's how we make improvements to our community, how we care for that natural environment, how we promote jobs and economic development that are consistent and aligned with that identity that we have for our city. The next characteristic is about our community being dynamic, that we know that we have chronic challenges that have been facing the city. We also know that we have major challenges that we will be experiencing in the future, like climate change. So the next part of the plan talks about
all of those elements of our city that we must continue to evolve around, and that we must continue to be creative and innovative around addressing. Really leveraging those things that make us a unique city, using them to our advantage, and continuing to build upon them so that we can address our challenges. So when we talk about these, there are a number of goals in here that really are about reducing our impact on climate change, becoming more resilient and prepared for the impacts of climate change, things like how we continue to participate in our larger region, what we contribute to our region and to Vermont, and what we also gain from our region and from the rest of Vermont. The next thing that the plan talks about is our city as an inclusive city. And this is really about all of the things that we recognize are currently barriers to equity and opportunity in the community, and how we can work to break down and overcome those barriers to make sure there's opportunity for everyone in our city. Obviously, when we talk about these issues, often we're talking about things like housing opportunity and economic opportunity, making sure there are jobs for everyone to participate in our city at a skill level and in the kind of workforce that they would like to be able to participate in. But also opportunity in the sense of if we're going to have a workforce that everybody has an opportunity to participate in, what are some of the needs that they have to be able to do that, like reliable transportation or childcare or other supportive services that will allow them to participate. This also talks a lot about how we participate in conversations like this, and particularly making sure that we are addressing barriers that exist in our city to participation. So there's a lot of conversation in here about youth. There's a lot of conversation in here about engaging members of our community that don't typically have an opportunity to lend their voice to decision-making and planning processes in the city. And then the final piece is about our city as a connected city. And this is really kind of all of the broad ways that we think about connections in our community. Everything from the physical connections, like how we move around our city using our transportation system, connections in terms of making sure that our community is supported by utilities that serve our needs in a sustainable way over time. Things like connecting our decision making and ensuring that we are considering kind of the long-term or cumulative impacts of decisions that we're making in terms of the future of our community. The other piece of this plan, and a really important element of this plan, is that we consider kind of where and how we will be able to do these things, or where and how we can achieve these goals in our city. Our plan has always been organized around three really important principles for how we'll use land in the city over time. The first is that we will really conserve and protect those important natural resources in our city that provide us not only with natural system benefits, but also with health and recreational opportunities in the community. That we talk about this in the updated plan as those areas of our city that we are planning to conserve, those natural and kind of cultural historic resources. The other principle is about having strong and diverse neighborhoods. Burlington is one of the elements of our identity, is that we do have a lot of neighborhoods that have very distinctive identities, not only in terms of what type of housing opportunities are in those neighborhoods, but what type of people and priorities those neighborhoods really embody. So the next part of the plan talks about those areas of the city that we're planning to sustain in terms of our residential neighborhoods, and making sure that those neighborhoods continue to be strong, and that over time we're able to address some of the individual challenges that neighborhoods experience. In some neighborhoods, that means that housing opportunity is very difficult for everyone. It means that housing cost might be prohibitively expensive for people to be able to live in a certain neighborhood. In other places, neighborhoods might experience the impacts of their population aging, and a lot of people kind of getting ready to think about what happens next as they get older, or what are the impacts on their neighborhood of being really close to one of the institutions on the hill.
Each of these neighborhoods has these kind of unique influences and challenges, and the plan talks about a number of things that we can and should be looking at in terms of how we make sure our neighborhoods continue to be strong and diverse places in light of those influences. And then finally, the last principle of the plan has been about as we grow, as we fulfill our needs for housing opportunity or job opportunities or other kind of amenities that we want to have in our city, that we promote infill and redevelopment as the place where that happens, rather than kind of pushing that growth into new areas of our city, areas that we might want to conserve, or areas like our residential neighborhoods that we might want to sustain. So the last part of the plan talks about what are those areas of our city that can accommodate that growth when we need it and as it happens in our city. This talks about a number of places and scales. Much like our residential neighborhoods, the type of growth that our city can or might accommodate in the future is not the same everywhere in the city. We have certain parts of our community that are really more appropriate for thinking about things like neighborhood supporting services. North Street is a really good example of a place in our community where we might talk about growth, but it's really about those day-to-day sort of neighborhood supporting services that will benefit all of you within your neighborhood. Versus a place like downtown that might serve a more citywide or even a regional service in terms of what types of businesses and amenities and jobs and housing might be there. So that's the kind of last part of the plan there, is talking about what those areas are where we might grow in the future. And I talked about all that. So as Jen said, we have been working on this plan over the last year. We had a workshop and public hearing about the draft last week. We're going to continue having community conversations about this draft over the next several months. We are working on setting up some workshops in January, actually, for us to start to dig into the details and really think about what does it look like for Burlington to be a connected city? What does it look like for Burlington to be an inclusive city? The Planning Commission's work thus far has been to start drafting what we believe are the action items that will help us achieve that. But we really want to check that with you and hear from you and from your perspective about what are some of those things that we will be able to do to help us achieve these goals as a city. So stay tuned. We'll be sharing information and specific dates about workshops and other opportunities for you to share your perspectives on that question or those questions in January and into February and March as well. We'll be working with all of you and with our city councilors in the new year to continue having a conversation. So I'm actually going to, as I wrap up here, I'm going to hand around these sheets, or Jen can help hand around these sheets. If you have thoughts tonight about any of these kind of ideas that I just mentioned, or things that you think are really important to make sure in the plan, feel free to write them and leave them with me, or there's information on there about how you can submit your ideas if you have them after tonight.
Quick question.
Great.
I might or might not be quick, but the question will be quick. It sounds like you're coming up with a very detailed plan, getting a lot of input as to what the city should look like in all the different facets that you can be thought of. But does this plan have any teeth to it? Is there any way of, it just seems, unless I'm mistaken, it seems like we just saw a case where we had a plan, but then the mayor had a different plan and just really pushed hard on it. And it could be a different mayor down the road who has other ideas and could push really hard for them and might contradict all this plan that everybody spent a lot of time coming up with.
Great. That's a great question. And I think the question about this plan having teeth is one that the plan is very different than a zoning ordinance, for example, that kind of illustrates in black and white what you can and can't do on a property, for example. This plan does not have that same sort of regulatory effect. But what this plan does is actually is something that guides our conversations when we might be considering a zoning amendment. Jen might be able to speak to this, but one of the roles of our planning commission is to consider what's in this plan anytime there might be a request to create a policy or to advance a project or program. It's a plan that we consult and discuss all of the time in the work that we do. I think that one of the things that's really important to touch back on, I said at the beginning, is that this plan doesn't always answer all of our questions. And I think that there are a number of things that we will see that we will start to have more community conversation about sort of specific actions or projects or initiatives in the city over the next several years that this plan is telling us, like, hey, we really need to have a conversation about this issue and figure out very tangibly what it means for us to be able to accomplish this. But it's something that really guides all of the work that we do without being regulatory in nature. Do you have anything to add?
I think we say a lot on the Planning Commission. We talk a lot about the plan, and then, but it's the plan that needs to be implemented. So the plan is kind of the first step, if you want to think about it that way. And then if there are action steps in there, we have to take further action, either as a Planning Commission, as a city, as private businesses. So there's a lot of different people that can be a part of that implementation, but that's really, I think, where the rubber hits the road. And so, sometimes I totally understand, sometimes the vision can seem quite broad, and it's really where implementation happens, where it can feel like maybe there's a conflict or people don't necessarily agree with how implementation is happening, but we do try to set the vision that guides that implementation. So that's kind of how those two things work together. And as Megan said, the zoning ordinance is really the nitty-gritty, very detailed description of how we can develop certain parts of our city. But I do think that nobody should think that just because we've done this plan that the work is over, and you do need to stay continually engaged with those implementation conversations, because that's really what is going to make the difference in the city.
Thank you for having meetings about this in the months to come. Did you say January? Or great. How will those be on Front Porch Forum?
Yeah, we will, as soon as we have the dates set for sure, we'll share them on Front Porch Forum and in a number of other ways. If you would like, we also send direct emails about these events. So on the little papers that went around, if you want to receive an email, maybe write your email address on it and say that. We'll also be having opportunities for you to share your input online as well. If you can't come to one of those meetings, we don't want that to be the only opportunity to share your input. So that little paper will tell you a number of ways that you can share your thoughts with us, and that will continue over the next several months.
Oh, cool. And one of the follow-up question on the meetings, are those meetings, I know sometimes there's meetings that are just, I would like to see the meetings as an opportunity for different stakeholder groups to have conversations. I think sometimes there's, a meeting for the business people and then a meeting for the residents and then a meeting for the property owners. And I think a lot of good things happen in a community when people who come from different groups but have a lot of overlapping agreement realize that they have a lot of overlapping agreement and then are able to have a conversation about the things that they don't agree on.
That's a really important perspective, and actually that's something that we've heard and we tried to do at our meeting last week at our public hearing. Instead of us kind of saying like, oh, here's the plan, now everybody raise your hand and tell us what you think, we actually gave everyone the opportunity to talk with each other about what their thoughts were on the plan and share that feedback in that group environment. And it was, just like you said, there were people that represented the business community, there were, I live downtown or I work downtown, and we all were able to hear each other's perspectives and talk about them together. So I definitely anticipate that that will be a major part of our next few discussions as well.
I had asked you at another meeting about the footnotes and the
Yes.
citations to the
Yes.
statistics. There's a lot of statistics in the document that are sort of the foundation assumptions of how the other things are developed, and it's really critical that there's citations to those so that
Yes.
people can decide whether they believe those are accurate statistics or not. So,
You're right.
have you located those footnotes?
I have. I
Excellent.
figured out what happened, and we're correcting that right now. So I'll email you directly as well, and the document will be updated too. All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Here she comes now. Talk about our community development block grants, otherwise known as CBDBDBDBD.
Hi, everybody. I know I'm the last one, so I'll make it quick. I'm here on behalf of Val Russell, who is with CEDO, as is me too. She is our manager for the Community Development Block Grant, and this is a large grant, almost $500,000 that the city gets from HUD each year, and this is an opportunity for us as a community to decide what we want to do with this grant. The grant's purpose is to alleviate poverty, and we go out and we work with the NPAs to get representatives of each NPA, and they come together and through 4 months, they look at the applications from different nonprofits and programs and help allocate this funding. So the city of Burlington has been recognized nationally for this model because there's a lot of cities that will get the money, the mayor will decide, and the city departments will decide, and there's no opportunity for the residents to decide what to do with this funding. So the NPA's wards 2 and 3, where we have 2 representatives that have served for 2 years, and so the NPA committee members want to open this up again. So we're looking for some Ward 2, 3 members to come and just join us. And if you're interested, you can reach out to your committee members, or I will leave the information on the table behind, and you can reach out to Val Russell herself. But it's an average of about 20 hours total. That's both reading the applications is about 15 applications, and also coming together from January to April to meet with the other ward members to discuss the applications and the recommendations, come up with the recommendations. So it's a great way to get involved, to make a big impact, and also not have a long commitment. So a lot of the money has gone to shelters or community health centers and mentoring programs. So yes, so reach out to your committee members, and I'll
And we will take those nominations, and then we as a NPA will vote on our individuals, if I'm not mistaken, to represent. Correct?
Is that your process?
Well, it is, although I think Val wanted to have them by January 19th, so, but she just let us know a few days ago. So is there anybody that is interested?
Okay, we have one person over there.
2 people. Now, what wards are each of you in? 3, and you're both 3? No, they're all 3. Well, it sounds... 2.
Oh, right. Well, that makes it easy, right? Is there
So,
anybody else?
Wait.
Oh, okay, 3.
2. Wait, so maybe stand up if you're from Ward 3 and you would like to do this. Just make sure. Oh, so we have 3.
This is where you can vote then.
Yeah, so are people okay with voting tonight? I know, but I think it starts before. It starts, but so January 19th, we will be meeting once again. There you go. Thank you, everybody. I'm a little discombobulated. You should not give me the microphone. And I was just coming up here to do the raffle. I can't.
No, that's good. The first meeting for the advisory board is January 24th.
Okay.
So it's good that we at least have people who are interested. So you.
Yes. So we will take your names. And then we will vote in January 10th, I believe, is the second Thursday, maybe. And Janet is also doing something with her right hand.
Yep. So you three, don't forget to come back next month with a little synopsis of who you are and why you should represent our $500,000 in grants. And you will do it equitably.
And the other thing is that I think there's 2 links on the agenda, which Pitt will, I think, post online so you don't have to type it at some point. And that gives, I think, the dates.
Oh, yes, I have the dates right here, too, the schedule, so.
Okay, so just to make
yeah.
sure that you'll be in town for all of those. I know that's important. Maybe go talk to Pitt afterwards and she can give you more
I'll connect
information.
with you all to get your emails.
And we'll get your names.
And we have one, if I'm not mistaken, we need one representative from each ward, correct?
So,
All right.
we have our number 2. I mean, we have our Ward 2.
You make a lovely number 2.
Unless there's anybody else from Ward. Okay.
All right.
Done?
That said, please don't leave without giving a hand if you can with the cleanup. And there is tons of leftovers. And we have a raffle.
Big raffle.
Dobra tea.
Did
If you
everybody put their
did ev-
name in for the gift certificate to Dover Tea?
Who's got it?
Oh, shut up.
Whoever's got it, turn it off. Where is it? So anybody else want to put their name in quick? It's for Dobra tea. Wait a minute. We got. Haven't you won like 3 months in a row already? Woohoo! There we go. Thank you again. There are leftovers of a delicious dinner, and if you haven't had any dinner, you're welcome to take some home. Take out from community dinner. What more can you ask for? Tables, chairs get stacked 10 high. Please help. Thank you kindly.